Can you hear me, or do I need to use a microphone? Okay, good. I hate a microphone, so thank you very much. Before we get started, I'd like to ask if everybody can please move their name tag forward and angle it slightly so that I can read all of them at a moment's notice. Thank you very much. I'm going to give a few words of welcome, let you know how the evening will unfold, and introduce our first speakers. But before we do that, I would like to turn it over to Mayor Alto to provide our land acknowledgement this evening.
Thank you very much, Chair Hayes. And here we are here at the Union Club, uniquely, in the City of Victoria, one of the two communities on whose territories both the Township of Esquimalt and the City of Victoria rest in their entirety. We're here with the grace and the continued ongoing generosity of the two nations on those territories, the Kosapsum people of the Kosapsum, rather the Lekwungen people of the Kosapsum Nation and the Songhees Nation. And it's important for us to recognize these despite the fact that the police service for Victoria and Esquimalt does not serve both nations completely, but in fact many of the people that we do serve and support and work with every day are from the nations, whether they are here in the city or in the township. And I do know that both of the chiefs have expressed interest in being part of conversations about the service and how they can work together with us. And we will make every effort to accommodate those conversations and facilitate them as quickly as possible. I know that you are all here with an open mind and good hearts, and that we are all together tonight to try and make the best decisions we can to support the service as it relates to all of the people here in our two communities. And so with that, I urge you all to think each day of a moment in which the words of welcome and acknowledgement are meaningful to you individually in some personal way. And for us in the City of Victoria, we begin every meeting by saying Haishkasiem Naquilia, which is to say thank you, and I honor all of you individually as leaders and as a collective here in this room and in each place where you take a step in your communities.
Thank you very much, Mayor Alto, for that beautiful and important land acknowledgement. So I just want to step back and take a real opportunity to warmly welcome everybody here this evening. It is my pleasure to have both councils together and our Victoria and Esquimalt Police Board, as well as many members of the Victoria Police Department, for an opportunity to present to you the 2026 provisional budget. I know that everyone in this room cares deeply about public safety and community safety and well-being and wellness and thriving in the communities that we serve. And with that in mind, I'm thrilled to bring forward a budget this year that really represents that and supports excellent policing. I'm not a fan of the term adequate and effective policing. I think VicPD is offering excellent policing, and I'm looking forward to an opportunity to present and discuss that budget with you this evening. I want to take a moment and really appreciate all the people who have done an extraordinary amount of work in creating this budget, starting with our finance chair, Elizabeth Call, who puts hours and hours and months of time into community engagement and understanding what members of the community from the City of Victoria and the Township of Esquimalt are looking for. I want to thank our Director of Finance, Donna Phillips, for doing so much extraordinary detailed work in creating this budget. And I want to thank our senior leadership team in the room with Chief Constable Fiona Wilson and Deputy McCrae Brown for all of the care that has gone into this budget. So before I turn it over to Finance Chair Call to start the evening, I'd actually like to take an opportunity for all of us to introduce ourselves in the room. And I will start with you, Chief Wilson.
Thank you so much. My name is Fiona Wilson, and I am the Chief Constable of the Victoria Police Department.
Michael Brown, I'm one of the deputies here at VicPD.
Hi everybody, Jamie McRae, also Deputy Chief of the Victoria Police Department.
Director of Financial Services at VicPD, Donna Phillips. Elizabeth Call, and Finance Chair.
Paul Farrow from the Victoria and Esquimalt Police Board. I'm also Chair of the Governance Committee.
Tim Morrison, Councillor, Township of Esquimalt.
I'm the Second Superior from the Police Board as well.
Good evening, my name is Chris Coleman, Councillor, City of Victoria.
I'm Holly Courtwright. I'm on the Police Board, and I am the Esquimalt representative.
I'm Jeremy Cardona, Victoria City Council.
Ian Irvin, Director of Finance for Township of Esquimalt.
Dan Horan, Chief Administrative Officer in Esquimalt.
Mark
Mark Desjardins, Mayor of the Township of Esquimalt, and I'll just bring regrets from Councillor Brain.
I just don't want to be left out. I'm Michaela Hayes, the Victoria Esquimalt Police Board Chair.
And I'm Marianne Alter, I'm the Mayor of the City of Victoria and also a board member.
And I'm Suzanne Thompson, I'm Deputy City Manager and Chief Financial Officer for Victoria.
Hello everyone, Jocelyn Jenkins, City Manager, City of Victoria.
Dave Thompson, Victoria City Council.
Duncan Cavins, Esquimalt Council.
Krista Lutton, City of Victoria Councillor.
Stephen Hammond, Victoria City Council.
Andrea Boardman, Esquimalt Councillor and board member.
Mark Gardner, City Victoria Councillor.
Susan Kim, She-They, City of Victoria Councillor.
Tom Saltakis with the Victoria Police Union.
And I'm actually going to go on the outside of the room too. And Maria, will you introduce yourself as well?
Yes, my name is Maria Shepata. I'm Executive Assistant to Chief Fiona Wilson.
Thank you.
I'm Victoria Kim. I'm the Committee Coordinator for the Township of Esquimalt.
Hi, Jan Melnowski, Inspector with Victoria Police.
Chris Gossage, Director of Human Resources.
Hello, I'm Connor King, an inspector with the Victoria Police.
I'm Dan Phillips, Director of Information Risk.
Hi everyone, I'm Tiffany Parton. I'm the newly appointed Director of Strategic Communications with VicPD.
Howard Tranckery, Safety and Wellbeing Liaison for Victoria Police.
Hi everyone, I'm Colleen Mycroft. I'm the Manager of Media Relations and Intergovernmental Relations. Sorry, it's a bit of a
It's a nice title.
Stacy Grubb, City Solicitor for City Victoria.
Kelly Erickson, Manager, City Manager in the Mayor's Office.
Judy Kitts, Director of Strategic Initiatives, Township of Esquimalt.
Wonderful. Once again, welcome to everyone. Just to give you a lay of the land, you've all received an agenda. We are going to have a presentation. We're going to have some words from Finance Chair Elizabeth Call. We're going to hear from Donna Phillips and from Chief Fiona Wilson, and then we will have discussion. I will take a speaking list, and I will do my best to go back and forth between Esquimalt and Victoria and make sure that everyone has an opportunity to ask all of their questions. And I'll just remind everyone that we're not looking for any decisions tonight. It's just the first opportunity for discussion. So with that, I will hand it over to you, Elizabeth.
I'm going to stand partly because I'm short and I can't see you all when I'm sitting down. Hello everyone, I don't need to introduce myself, Michaela's already done that, but I want to tell you this is the third time I've had the job, the pleasure, the challenge of presenting the Victoria Esquimalt Police Board budget. And let me tell you, it's been a very interesting learning process over the last number of years.
Could you use the mic, please?
Yeah, we can't hear you.
There is no mic.
Yes.
Thank
Oh,
you.
I see.
Thanks, Maria.
Sure. Wow, I've never been asked to talk more. Yeah, usually it's quite loud. Fine. That's all. So, as you know, as municipal councils, you know the budgeting is never easy. There's always more demands and resources. Community expectations are high and they're sometimes changing all the time. They're not consistent. And there's lots of things beyond your control. And I can see some nods around the table. That's how municipal budgets work. Let me tell you, that's exactly how our budgets work. We have the same challenges. The role of the Finance Committee is to oversee the preparation of the budget. And we're there to make sure that our Finance Director and all the people working in the VicPD do their jobs properly. But we're also there to reflect the needs of the community. And to that end, we have met with a number of people during the budget process to make sure that we are able to reflect the needs of the community. We started off with the municipal staff and the municipalities, so we knew what they were concerned about. But we also have gone on and met with many members of organizations and individuals in Victoria to ask them what are their policing priorities, what are their concerns, and we've tried to learn from that and build that into our budget. We've also had well-considered advice from our senior leadership team, and let me tell you, we ask them a lot of tough questions when they come before us with their ideas and their budget presentation. So, in developing our budget, we've considered how to best address community concerns about safety and well-being, but more particularly, what is the role the police play? And we talked about in our budget committee, what do we need to do to support our staff to make sure that they can do their job, the men and women who work to keep our community safe every day. And also, we're very mindful of the scarce resources that municipalities have and the competing demand for tax dollars. So we think the budget we have crafted and put before you tonight meets those expectations, those challenges that we put to input to us. And obviously you'll have a chance to weigh in on that and see whether we've delivered what we think we have. But it's my plan to turn it over to our police chief to run us through the details of the budget.
Thanks, Elizabeth. I'm not one who normally needs a microphone, but I think I'll use one today just in case so everybody can hear. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here and for taking the time to go through our presentation with us today. I just also want to acknowledge all of the hard work of Board Member Cull, but also Donna Phillips, our Director of Finance. And also the two deputies who are here with me today, Deputies McRae and Brown. You know, this has really been an all hands on deck approach putting this together. And I'm deeply grateful for all of the SLT members who are here and also for Sergeant Stamatakis, who is here from the police union. Really appreciate seeing everyone in the room this evening. So this presentation is designed to give a really clear picture of the pressures, priorities, and progress shaping policing in both Victoria and Esquimalt. Our goal tonight is to walk you through what's driving demand for service, how we're adapting to the challenges, and the strategic steps we're taking to strengthen community safety and organizational resilience moving forward. Policing today, as you all well know, is about so much more than crime. The majority of our calls involve people who are in crisis. They're struggling with mental health, with substance use, with homelessness, or repeat victimization. We are increasingly the first point of contact when other systems are stretched or unavailable, and the reality has fundamentally changed the nature of our work over the last decade especially. At the same time, both our communities expect and deserve visible, accountable, and effective policing. We've made significant progress in building partnerships across health, housing, and bylaw, and initiatives like the upcoming launch of Health I Am and the rollout of the City of Victoria's Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan are concrete examples of how we're strengthening collaboration and improving outcomes. This presentation will also place our work in the larger financial context. We recognize the realities that both municipalities face. Despite rising complexity and workload, VicPD's share of each municipal budget has remained stable, roughly 22 to 24%, which is actually consistent with police agencies across the country. That reflects a disciplined and responsible approach to budgeting, one that focuses on efficiency, modernization, and value for money. Ultimately, this budget presentation will be about balance, maintaining public safety and community trust while being realistic about resources. I've also had the opportunity to take a fresh look at the resources at VicPD from a different perspective. The data, community feedback, and council priorities you'll see today all point to the same conclusion, that public safety depends on sustained collaborative investment in the systems that support it. With that in mind, I'll start by framing what policing in our region really looks like today and how it's changing. I just want to talk a little bit about why this budget matters, and I'll start off with some broad strokes. The police budget determines, of course, how many officers and civilian staff can be hired, trained, and deployed. Underfunding leads to fewer patrol officers, longer response times, and reduced investigative capacity, particularly in violent crime, property crime, and specialized units such as cybercrime, domestic violence, or mental health responses. Officer wellness and retention is reflected in budgets. It's reflected in training and support services that prevent burnout, PTSD, and significant turnover. Inadequate resources force overtime dependence, increasing mental health risks. Studies show a strong correlation between chronic overtime and occupational stress injuries in police services, and that's from a 2021 Canadian Journal of Criminology and Criminal Justice report that came out a few years ago. A well-structured budget allows for modern training, technology, and accountability mechanisms. Things like body-worn cameras, de-escalation, trauma-informed training, data analytics, early intervention, prevention systems, they all depend on consistent funding. Without sustained investment, public expectations for transparency and professionalism get more difficult to reach. In terms of adaptation to social complexity, the nature of policing has shifted. Officers increasingly respond to mental health crises, addictions, homelessness, repeat offenders. And in fact, a 2022 Statistics Canada study found that non-criminal calls now account for over 65% of police workload nationwide. And I always talk about how important it is not just to have discussion around the space that police should be, but also the place that we don't need to be, the spaces that we don't need to occupy. And I think that 65% statistic is really telling with respect to some of those conversations. Proper funding ensures collaboration with health, housing, and community agencies, preventing police from being the default response system. Go to the next slide, please. So another thing that I'm going to hone in a little bit on why the budget matters, to be a little bit more specific to the cities of both Victoria and Esquimalt. Street disorder and public safety complexities continue to dominate frontline demand, and I've seen this myself. I've been out on the road, I've been out walking the beat. This is fueled by overlapping mental health, addiction, homelessness, and repeat offender challenges, and we see this in cities across the country. Recruitment and retention pressures remain critical, and I'm happy to talk about some of the work that we're doing at VicPD to address this. This is a national experience for police agencies. In fact, I would say it's not just national, it's throughout North America we're seeing this. Keeping pace with population growth and complexity, and I'm going to talk a little bit about what some of those complexities have been over the last 10 years especially. And of course, employee health and well-being are under strain as workload, trauma exposure, and limited relief time increases risk of burnout and absenteeism. I would also add to that the framework agreement uncertainty beyond 2026 really underscores the need for stable, equitable funding and clarity on long-term service delivery models, and I hope we can talk a little bit about that tonight. Next slide, please. So there have been a number of key groups that were consulted with respect to this budget, including the Greater Victoria Police Diversity Advisory Committee, the Victoria Community Association Network, the Esquimalt Chamber of Commerce, the Downtown Victoria Business Association, and more. We have been actively listening to our communities through surveys, in-person engagement, partner feedback, and the insights have clearly guided our direction. According to the 2024 community survey covering Victoria and Esquimalt, in Victoria, 29% of respondents identified open drug use as the single problem that police should pay closer attention to. Homelessness followed by 19%. In Esquimalt, the largest concern at 20% again was open drug use, followed by traffic offenses at 19% and homelessness at 13%. When asked, do you feel safe in your neighborhood during the day, 86% of respondents in the Victoria jurisdiction said yes, but when asked about downtown at night, only 22% said they feel safe. On trust and satisfaction, in Victoria, 88% of people agreed with the statement that police and citizens working together can help make this a better place to live and work. From this data, several important community messages emerge. There is a clear demand for a larger police presence, particularly downtown Victoria, and it's not simply anecdotal. It is grounded in what people are telling us. They want visible, accessible officers who are part of the neighborhood. Concerns about property crime and disorder, homelessness, and open drug use are clearly top of mind for residents and businesses. The feedback underscores the importance of collaboration with our bylaw and social service partners, and many of these issues raised aren't purely about policing. Where people are, when they are, and how they feel safe all vary. There's high satisfaction and statement agreement scores that show that many in the community see police at VicPD as approachable and collaborative, which is a great foundation. So as we move forward, we must use this data to calibrate where we allocate our resources. For example, more visible presence in downtown, targeted outreach in identified hotspots, and to continue to build partnerships with social, health, and housing sectors, because community is telling us these issues extend beyond enforcement. And so by weaving these things into our priorities, and you'll see that throughout this budget, we demonstrate that we're not only listening, but we're actually responding. Next slide. So we also consulted with municipal councils, and I spent a lot of time over the last few weeks listening to previous council meetings as well that are online. Both the City of Victoria and the Township of Esquimalt. And what we're hearing really closely aligns with what residents have told us through the most recent community surveys, and it also aligns with what you're going to see in this budget. Both councils have been clear that cost pressures are a major concern. There's an expectation that all departments, including VicPD, continue to find efficiencies and demonstrate value for money. The emphasis is on balancing fiscal accountability with a need to maintain effective service delivery, and that's why we continue to look for operational improvements, shared efficiencies, and regional collaboration opportunities that don't compromise public safety. At the same time, both councils are hearing from their communities about the visible impacts of social disorder, traffic issues, and public drug use, which continue to shape perceptions of safety and well-being. And I've gone over some of those 2024 community survey results. The findings echo what we've heard directly from councils. There's support for VicPD's continued efforts to modernize and to collaborate across sectors, but there's also an expectation that we strengthen transparency, communication, and data-driven reporting. Councils want to see clear evidence that our work is improving safety outcomes, not just activity levels. In terms of specific priorities, both councils have identified traffic safety, including visibility and enforcement in problem areas, support for bylaw and regulatory enforcement where integrated approaches can reduce duplication, public drug consumption and street disorder, which are affecting public confidence and perceptions of safety, better use of data and trend analysis to inform decision-making, and continued efficiencies within VicPD, demonstrating prudent use of resources while maintaining frontline capacity. And all of those considerations have been woven into this budget. So this slide, previous slide please, Maria. This slide really captures the intersection between what councils are saying and what community is experiencing. Cost pressures are real, but so are the expectations for visible, proactive policing, timely communication, and accountability. And our job is to show that we're listening to both of those things, that we understand the fiscal realities municipalities are facing, while also responding to the very real safety and livability issues affecting residents and businesses in both Victoria and Esquimalt. So in short, our approach to this budget has been both fiscally responsible and community driven. Go to the next slide, please. Thanks, Maria. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the wins we've had. When I landed at VicPD, I started taking a really deep dive into a number of the programs that we have. What are some of the things that I really feel have gone well, that we've got right? The police and community together. This is an initiative that involved assigning one officer to 80 community segments outside of the downtowns. And interestingly, I went out on a patrol shift with one of the members who had been assigned an area not far from the station. And in that area was a park that she took responsibility for. And she explained to me how over a 6-month period, she essentially decamped that park in consultation and collaboration with the people in the park, with city, with bylaw, with the community members that surrounded the park, and working with Crown Council. And it was really extraordinary what the outcomes were, because what I saw before me was a park that was full of people, it was a beautiful sunny day, and it was all thanks to the effort of this one police officer who had been assigned this area under PACT. Before the badge, I know you're all familiar with that, launched in April 2025 by former Chief Manick, helped recruits to better understand diverse communities that they go on to serve in. Project 3D was introduced in July 2025. This really focused on street disorder in the downtown core that led to a number of arrests, multiple drug trafficking investigations. The school police liaison officers, I felt like this is a topic that I was very, very familiar with coming from the VicPD, where I had gone through that lengthy process of SLOs being removed from schools and then being brought back into schools. So very happy to see them back in schools here in Victoria and Esquimalt. Revoy, anytime there is an opportunity for us to access resources from the province, we are taking full advantage of it. And I can tell you, having come from the VPD and seeing what's happening at VicPD to access these resources, it's really quite extraordinary. Whether we're talking about C-STEP funding, Revoy funding, site funding, VicPD is pulling out all the stops to make sure we get our fair share of those funds, and indeed we have. Revoy is the Repeat Violent Offender Program. There was a number of arrests that happened over 3 operations. And in fact, in May of 2025, when there was an intention to go and pick up a number of the people who had warrants out for their arrests, with respect to some of the work that had been under Revoy, 12 of the 25 clients were already actually serving custodial sentences as a result of work that had gone on in those projects. C-STEP funding, I mentioned that, that's the bike and beats that now we're very happy to be able to extend through March with assistance from the City of Victoria's funding and provincial funding. Retail theft projects, there's been a number of retail theft projects that have been very, very successful, focusing on places like Lululemon, businesses that have been really hard hit by retail theft. And then a number of community education and awareness projects on things like fraud prevention, cybercrime, CEPTEP, and online exploitation. So this is what I was talking about earlier in terms of our piece of the pie. It really has remained quite stable over the last number of years, typically between 22 and 25% of the overall operating budgets of both cities. And that is very, very consistent with police agencies across the country. In 2025, for Victoria, policing represented 23% of Victoria's overall operating budget and 24% of Esquimalt's. And you can see, I think what's important about that is this chart really helps to illustrate that we are not seeing runaway growth in policing costs. So, everybody's costs have gone up over the years. I would be more concerned if I saw that we had gone from 20% of the overall budget, for example, to 28% of the overall budget. But the reality is our piece of the city budgets has remained pretty stable over the years. Okay, next slide, please. When we talk about strategic issues and pressures, this slide really captures what our members are navigating every single day. And I know there's a lot of words on that slide. This list might look long, but every one of these points represents a real and growing challenge for policing, both operationally and organizationally. The first group protests mental health, street violence, hate crimes, missing persons, homelessness, the opioid crisis. This really reflects the complex social environment that we're operating in. And these are not, as you all very well know, isolated issues. They are all interconnected. The people we encounter often face multiple layers of vulnerability. Substance use disorder, trauma, housing instability, mental illness. And police are often the first one and sometimes the only ones available to respond 24/7. Encampments and street disorder continue to dominate much of our work, downtown especially. They not only strain frontline resources, but also shape public perceptions of safety and community well-being. At the same time, bail reform and systemic court delays have made it increasingly challenging to interrupt cycles of repeat offending. Hospital wait times remains one of the most significant operational pressures we face. We had 2 police officers sitting at the hospital for over 15 hours for a Section 28 arrest under the provisions of the Mental Health Act just last week, and that is not unusual. I was looking at the statistics for September, and of the 9 incidents where we had police officers waiting 5 hours or longer, 1 of them resulted in committal. And that just goes to show the complexity of dual diagnosis, people who are not just suffering from mental illness, but are also suffering from significant substance use disorders. And beyond these frontline pressures, there's a growing administrative and systemic burden, increased oversight, evolving expectations from the public, new reporting requirements, and a rapidly changing technology environment. Digital evidence management, adapting to AI, integrating with e-com systems, and there's all sorts of layers of complexity that require time, training, and investment. And of course, you'll hear me talk about this quite a bit. Recruiting and retention are national challenges, and VicPD is no exception to that. The pool of qualified applicants is smaller. I consider that a bit more of an us problem, a me problem. In terms of recruiting and retention, we have a really, really robust plan moving forward to address that. But finally, I just want to say there are some external factors we cannot control. From world events that spark local demonstrations to large-scale events like the 2026 FIFA World Cup that will increase regional policing demands, to pressures on our partners like BC Ambulance Service and the JIBC that I'm sure many of you have been following in the news lately. But this slide just really illustrates the reality. The environment that policing operates in today is more complex, it's more interconnected, and it's more demanding, I would say, than any time in our history. So, additional challenges we're managing, and I've already mentioned this. Coming from outside and having a chance to read the framework agreement many, many times now, and understanding the implications of the framework agreement, it's not working. And, I really will endeavor to come up with some creative solutions moving forward. I know everybody talks about regionalization. We've been talking about regionalization in this province for as long as I've been in policing, and I think a lot longer actually when you go back to the original OPO report. That is a really difficult agreement to reconcile, particularly around budget time. We've got budget appeals pending. I was looking back on the history of budget appeals. We at VicPD wear the badge of having more budget appeals than any other municipal police department in this province. I did one when I was at the Vancouver Police Department. I think in our 148-year history, it was the only one we've ever done. Whereas here at VicPD, it seems to be an annual event. The complex social and public safety needs calls for police service are getting more complex with higher expectations and more oversight than at any other time in our history. Community expectations, rightly so, are rising with requests for more foot and bike patrols, quick response times, enhanced visibility. Rising e-com and JIBC costs, provincial and regional cost escalations are absorbing budget flexibility, leaving fewer discretionary funds for local priorities. Human and capital and wellness pressures, you're all familiar with those. Regional integration cost-sharing limitations, those are significant. Once again, a relatively new concept for me, to the extent that we are engaged in integrated partnerships here with other police agencies, given how many there are in the South Island in particular. Training expectations, technology and data demands, preventative investments yield long-term savings. Proactive staffing and community-based initiatives reduce downstream costs in emergency response, healthcare, and justice. And these are some of the challenges that we are definitely facing as we move forward. I just want to touch a little bit on community safety and well-being, although many of you have heard me talk about this. From VicPD's perspective, we support the community safety and well-being plan, particularly because there is what I see as a vital part of it being enforcement. We've hired Howard Tran, who is here with us tonight, who has been our liaison between VicPD and the City of Victoria, but also is working to drive down those hospital wait times, working with the Health Authority, working with the province. He has a career of experience doing just that at VPD. Data and call-out analysis, so making sure that we're data-driven, that we're making decisions that are based on empirical data. Drug policy and training. Many of our members were hired during decriminalization and need to be reminded about their lawful authorities under the Controlled Drugs and Substances Act, that when somebody is using illicit drugs on the streets of Victoria or Esquimalt, they absolutely have the lawful authority to approach that person, to perhaps arrest them, to perhaps seize their drugs under certain circumstances, but to use their discretion, if they choose not to direct them to a safe consumption site, but in any event, to send a very clear message that that sort of behavior is not acceptable on the streets of Victoria and Esquimalt. That does not mean we are contemplating throwing people in jail by virtue of their substance use disorder. There are many safeguards in place to prevent that. Crown has a despot policy that requires our police officers to consider alternatives before they ask for charges with respect to Section 4.1 under the Controlled Drugs and Substances Act, which is simple possession. But then actually embedded in that act under Section 10 are requirements that our police officers consider all other alternatives before requesting charges for simple possession, and take a compassionate and health-led approach to substance use. So I'm not suggesting we send people to jail. I am suggesting that we can utilize our lawful authority to make it clear that there are other places where it's appropriate for people to engage in drug use if they so choose. Beat and bike teams, we've already started dedicating a number of our police officers during the day to walk the beat, to get out into community. Of course, we've got the C-STEP funding. Bylaw partnerships, very, very important. We've already started building those out, working with bylaw almost on a daily basis here in Victoria and in Esquimalt. And officer recruitment, which is something that I'm happy to talk about a little bit more as we move forward. I'm going to just turn it briefly over to Donna for the next slide, and then we're going to sort of go back and forth a little bit as we move forward.
Okay. So the budget overview, the core increase is 9.82%, so that is a $7.755 million increase. It equates to $6.695 million for the City of Victoria and just over $1 million, $1,060,000 increase for the Township of Esquimalt. So it consists of non-discretionary 7.71%, which I'll go over in more detail in the later screens, and 2.11% in strategic growth. And then in addition, so that brings our total budget, our core budget, to just over $86 million. It's $86.754 million. In addition to the core budget, this budget proposal includes costs for Victoria only, as the Chief mentioned, in support of the city's community and safety wellbeing plan. And that cost comes in just over $3 million, $3.092 million. And the community safety and wellbeing plan costs are referred to in the full budget document as optional resources in some of the sections, which is a reference to Section 5 of the Framework Agreement outlining how policing services are provided to Victoria and Esquimalt. Section 5 allows a municipality to request and fund additional resources over and above the core budget. So there are two parts to the community safety and wellbeing plan, or cost component, two components, sorry, up to $3 million. So the first part is the 9 officers, which this was announced in 2025. That's the $1.35 million for the bike and beat section, including 2 dedicated officers for bylaw support. So the 2026 budget includes updated costs for these positions that reflect wage increments, benefits, and hiring costs, assuming hiring will occur in 2026. The cost is $1.851 million for that component. And then in addition to the 9 bike and beat, we are recommending to Victoria that we add 8 additional officers for a crime reduction unit in Victoria. As the business case in the budget package outlines, reestablishing the crime reduction unit, or the crew as we refer to it, will provide a focused, proactive capacity to address the most persistent drivers of crime and disorder. The team will perform some of these things and probably others. They're going to target prolific property offenders through intelligence-led investigations and surveillance. They're going to disrupt street-level drug trafficking networks, address chronic retail theft impacting the business community, respond flexibly to emerging crime trends and hotspots through coordinated operations with patrol, bylaw, and community partners. And they will support integrated approaches with health, housing, and outreach services to ensure enforcement is balanced with pathways to support consistent with the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan principles. So that budget for the 8 additional crew officers is $1.241 million, and the salaries and benefits have been prorated for a May 1st hire pending budget approval. So the 9 officers in the bike and beat are for a full year, and the crew are prorated.
Thanks, Donna. So, can we have the next slide, please, Marie? So, okay, so we currently have 260 sworn officers for our core budget, shared by Victoria and Esquimalt, plus the 9 officers announced, as Donna mentioned, for a total of 269. The 2026 budget, as she mentioned, includes a request for 4 patrol officers and 4 officers for the traffic section. And I think you've heard me talk about traffic. You know, I have this photo from 1999, and there's 18 members in the traffic unit. We now have 3 that deploy out of the city of Esquimalt. We are also proposing another 8 officers, as Donna mentioned, for a crime reduction unit in Victoria. In addition to our sworn officers, we have 15 special municipal constables, and we have 79 and a half civilian professional support staff. Victoria's Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan notes that maintaining policing levels relative to population growth would require 304 sworn officers by 2025. That's 44 new. 35 if you're including Victoria only. This proposal represents a modest strategic step towards closing that gap. So there is a further 4 that were requested in 2025 that are under appeal and not included in this budget proposal, and that was 2 community resource officers and 2 strike force officers. Next slide, please. So I'm just focusing a little bit more on Victoria here because of our significant ask under Section 5 of the Framework Agreement. This shows the population growth in Victoria. So you can see that it's been significant. Can we have the next slide? And the next one, sorry. This is the authorized strength over the same period of time for the Victoria Police Department. 12 police officers. So you see the city of Victoria population has gone like this. Our authorized strength has gone like that. And you know, that's not even talking about all of the other things that occurred over those 10 years. The expectations of the public, oversight, changes in case law like the Jordan decision, which had a massive impact on our disclosure timelines to Crown. Crown expectations, digital evidence management, the advent of media and social media, and cameras everywhere our members go. The scrutiny of the IIO, the OPCC, the Human Rights Tribunal. Policing has become so much more complex in those 10 years. The population has grown exponentially. The Victoria Police Department grew by 12 officers. It has simply been inadequate. And I can tell you as somebody coming in from the outside and taking a fresh look at the numbers, it is very, very clear to me that the reasons things like the crime reduction unit were disbanded a number of years ago, the beat and bite teams were disbanded a number of years ago, is because the authorized strength of the Victoria Police Department has not kept up with not only the population growth, but the complexities of policing over that 10 years. And it's meant that that street level enforcement, that presence that you may have been familiar with, if you were, taking note 15, 20 years ago, is simply not there anymore. And when I talk to members who were working the road during that time, when crew was disbanded, when the beat teams were disbanded, they have said universally, demonstrable difference to street level disorder almost overnight. And so we need to get back into a position where we're able to field those units so that we can focus on some of that street level disorder. Next slide, please. So this is just all the other stuff. When people think about policing, they often picture arrests, investigations, crime scenes, but the reality is in modern policing, and this is some of the things I've been talking about that have really exploded over the last 10 years, it's so much more broad. The majority of our calls for service are not about criminal activity. Each of the categories on this slide represents a major portion of our workload. Mental health calls, people in distress, suicidal individuals. These are daily occurrences that require compassion, patience, training, and time. And often several hours for each call. We're also the first point of contact for people in crisis when no other service is available, whether it's an abandoned 911 call, a missing person, an elopee from the hospital. And these calls reflect broader community issues: mental illness, addiction, housing instability, and repeat victimization. Officers are managing situations that require coordination, as I mentioned earlier, with health and housing and social agencies, integrated partnership programs. In fact, in 2024, roughly 2/3 of VicPD's calls involved non-criminal events, which is totally consistent with that national data I was previously talking about. The 65% of police workload across Canada is non-criminal in nature. And so, even though many of these situations fall outside of traditional crime, the public expects, and rightly so, that police will respond quickly, safely, and professionally. Whether we're managing a protest, a bylaw complaint, or a provincial traffic matter, each call represents a moment of public trust. And many of these calls involve working alongside our partners: Victoria Fire, Bylaw, Fire in Esquimalt, Island Health, BC Ambulance, and so many others. Community engagement and proactive initiatives like school talks, foot patrols, neighborhood meetings, these are essential to preventing issues before they escalate. And that's why this police budget really matters. When resources are stretched thin, these non-criminal but super high-risk calls compete with urgent crime responses. Each additional officer or civilian support role allows us to invest time where it makes the most difference, helping people before things turn into an emergency. So when we talk about police resources, we're really talking about our capacity to respond to people, not just crime. These are human calls for help, and they make up the majority of what policing looks like today. And from my perspective at VicPD, we do not have the resources to adequately do this. And we've seen that. We've seen that in street disorder challenges. We've seen that in the morale of our officers. It has such a ripple effect, because if you don't have enough people to sustain the work, there are serious long-term implications. And the challenge with going that 10 years without a significant lift in resources over those 10 years is that you don't feel it in year 2. You don't necessarily feel it in year 3, but you really feel it in year 4 or 5, and you certainly feel it in year 10, and that is where we are. And from my perspective, it's one of the single things that keeps me up at night, because it's very, very apparent to me as a new chief here that we do not have enough resources. And so I'll turn it back over to Donna to talk a bit more about the numbers.
So back to, this is an overview of the core increase at 9.82%. So this is how it breaks down. This is the core budget that's shared by Victoria and Esquimalt. So the non-discretionary costs, such as, this includes personnel, Ecom 911, and 7.71% of our budget. And then the other two sections here, the 2.02% is for strategic growth. So 8 new officers for patrol, 4 in the traffic section under the Esquimalt division. And then we have some other net costs, 0.09%, which I'll outline on the next screen. So combined, the last two items are the strategic growth component of 2.11. Next. So the non-discretionary portion, 7.71%, is just over $6 million, consisting of personnel costs at the current staffing level. So the increase is 4.331 million. And so this includes our 260 officers, plus the special municipal constables of 15, and our civilian professional support staff, 79.5. It includes estimated wage increments for 2025 and 2026. And the Victoria Police Union, their collective agreement ended December 31st, 2025. So the wage increments they're tied to the Vancouver Police Department, and the 2025 increases have not been ratified, so we have both years estimated in this budget based on the best information that we have. And then the QP Local 50 agreement ended December 31st, 2024. The econ budget, we're budgeting for a 10% increase in the budget over the current year. So this accounts for 587,000 of the increase, or 0.74% of the increase overall. Other contractual costs, 870,000, coming in at 1.1%, consist primarily of the Justice Institute of BC and costs associated with training our recruits for travel, meals, and accommodation to send our recruits to the mainland. So that's about just under 500,000, or 57% of these contractual costs. Other costs included in contractual are building operating costs charged by Victoria and Esquimalt, software such as Microsoft licenses in our Prime Police database, insurance, telecom, employment contract provisions. We have a program, a BC Municipal Undercover program we have to pay fees for. So those types of costs. And then we have our integrated unit share, 304,000. This contributes to 0.39% of the overall increase. And I just wanted to point out, I noticed this morning, this never fails to happen, there's a typo in the full budget document on page 57, where it says that the total integrated unit increase was a negative 46.8. It should be 7.02%. That's page 56, actually. So those increases consist primarily of wage increments, some inflation, some additional training for MIST, the Mobile Youth Services Team, and GVERT, the Greater Victoria Emergency Response Team. And it also increases some changes, which are noted in the budget document, with cost sharing with the other police agencies. So some have withdrawn from MIST, the Greater Victoria Regional Domestic Violence Unit, the RDVU, and the Greater Victoria Integrated Mobile Crisis Response Team, IMCERT, resulting in an increase for VicPD. These changes are outlined on page 18, and savings have been achieved for the integrated units to offset costs from reductions in equipment and training, such as in the public safety unit, and with the addition of Oak Bay Police Department to the integrated K9 service. This is just kind of another visual of contractual costs. So this doesn't include the personnel or the integrated units, but you can see the largest share is ecom and at 40%. And the next largest is the Justice Institute of BC. That includes the associated costs at 34%. So the strategic growth component, 2.11%, is 1.663 million increase. We break down to two major areas: new ongoing costs, just over $1 million, 1.028 million, and new one-time costs at 758,800. So both of these areas primarily consist of adding the 8 new officers, 4 in patrol and 4 in the traffic section. And the salaries and benefits for these 8 officers have been prorated for a start date of May 1st after budget approval. Under the ongoing costs, we also have just under $64,000 for additional costs for the reserve program. So VicPD relies on our reserve officers, and they are volunteers. It's also a feeder program for recruits. The program consists of 45 reserve officers, and the province authorizes us to have 60 officers. So we are under strength by 15. Each year, the department loses up to 15 officers through attrition, some of them becoming new recruits. This increase will allow us to increase the number of officers to 55 to respond to attrition and to allow for adequate outfitting and training and to improve security around how we communicate with these volunteers. Under one-time costs, some additional costs other than hiring costs for the new officers, which contributes $663,000. We have, I'm just looking at that 16 officers, it's confusing me, I think that should be 8. Yeah, so strategic planning, we have $100,000 one-time cost for strategic planning. It's a 5-year refresh so that we can update our strategic plan and align with municipal strategic plans, including the community safety and well-being plan, and to meet demands for service from the community, collaborative partnerships, and is required through legislation and under the Police Act. So, and we also have a $50,000 one-time cost for network redesign. We can no longer put off this one-time cost to convert the department's current flat network design, which increases the likelihood and impact of cybersecurity events and risks VicPD data to a network we want to move to a network segmentation design, which is best practice for a secure network. This is just a visual of the new ongoing costs. As you can see, the majority of those costs are for the 8 new officers, representing 91% of these costs at just over $1 million. And the next one is new one-time costs. Again, lion's share is the hiring costs associated with hiring those 8 officers. The new to this budget, and to address the addition of the new officers and to ensure that we have enough vehicles, we are including in one-time hiring costs a $10,000 per officer contribution to the capital reserve. This is for the purposes of funding vehicle purchases. This is an operating budget item, a transfer to the capital reserve, which will permanently increase the capital budget for vehicles. And the $10,000 is based on the cost of a fully equipped vehicle, assuming one vehicle is shared by 8 officers on average. And we happen to be requesting 8 officers in this core budget, which is a coincidence. So we have included $80,000 for one-time vehicle costs. And then finally, a part of strategic growth is we're trying to do more with less. So we've been able to offset the strategic growth increase with a net savings of about $124,000. It consists of savings and efficiencies net of some inflationary increases, which I'll go over. So on the savings side, we've been able to find savings in areas such as radios, fuel because of the electrification of our fleet, some jail professional services, and other costs. And we've been very intentional about finding efficiencies and savings across the organization while still maintaining service levels and supporting our members. The total identified savings this year was $324,000, plus an additional offsetting recovery for the freedom of information routine service request. And that's unnecessary spending. We've reduced costs in several key areas, as mentioned, fuel, radio maintenance, and recruitment. Some of these savings come from process improvements. For example, optimizing how vehicles are deployed and modernizing communications equipment, while others are the result of better vendor management and internal coordination. These savings are unfortunately offset by some areas where costs are rising. In particular, specialized equipment and uniforms, and vehicle maintenance costs because our fleet is aging. Most importantly, though, we have looked everywhere for savings. We haven't just made them disappear into our general budget. We've reinvested them into our strategic priorities: hiring, modernization, and member development. That includes strengthening recruitment capacity, updating technology and training, and continuing to build the internal systems that support wellness and leadership development. So when we say we're doing more with less, it's not just a slogan. It's a reflection of how we're adapting, innovating, and finding every opportunity to make our limited resources go further and still delivering high-quality policing. And my final slide, this is just an overview of what positions we have asked for in the last 3 budgets for civilian professional support. So between 2023 and 2025, we've asked for 8 positions, and we have received 4. Two out of the 8. 1 position approved on appeal for the 2023 budget, but 3 of those 3 positions in 2023 were denied on appeal. 1 position approved by municipalities in 2024, and we have 3 positions currently under appeal with the province, so 2 out of 8. So professional support staff are absolutely vital to a police department's function. Even though they are not responding directly to calls, they handle a huge amount of work that allows officers to focus on law enforcement and public safety. They both provide operational efficiency by freeing up officers, and they provide specialized support and expertise. So some of the areas that are staffed by civilians are the records management section. The police departments generate massive amounts of data: reports, evidence documentation, arrest records, court documents. Records staff organize, maintain, and secure this information. It's critical for investigations and legal requirements. It also provides for data analysis, which in turn allows the department to target resources, for example, by identifying crime trends. We also have staff, civilian staff, in evidence and property handling, community engagement, legal and administrative functions, HR, IT, finance, facilities and equipment management, and crime analysis and transcription. So it's broad, and it consists of 79.5 bodies.
Sorry, everyone, I should have taken my laptop with me. Can you just go back to that last slide, Maria? I'm just going to leave that up so everyone can read it while I'm doing this.
Smart.
Okay, so additional efficiencies. When we talk about additional efficiencies, this slide really highlights some of the ways that we're working to maximize our resources and modernize how we deliver policing services. And these aren't just cost-saving measures, they're strategies that improve service quality, they strengthen our partnerships, and create better outcomes for the people that we serve. Community partnerships and engagement continue to be one of our most effective tools. Whether we're working with Our Place, bylaws, housing providers, Portland Hotel Society, you name it, mental health agencies. These are the partnerships that allow us to address issues collaboratively rather than in isolation. They reduce duplication, they build trust, and it helps us to ensure that people are connected with the right supports, not just the criminal justice system. Multi-agency integration is another key efficiency. We're deeply involved in joint initiatives, for example, with BC Ambulance, Island Health, with the cities of both Victoria and Esquimalt, where coordinated response models lead to faster, safer, and more effective outcomes. And these collaborations are becoming the standard for dealing with complex social emergency issues. Volunteers, wow, have I ever been impressed with the volunteer cadre at VicPD. They play a huge role in extending our reach. Our volunteer programs support everything from traffic safety and crime prevention to community events and public education. They are ambassadors for the department, helping to build bridges and free up officers for higher priority calls. We're leveraging technology to improve efficiency, accountability. And I tell you, VicPD in this regard is light years ahead of so many other municipal departments in this province. Super impressive. But also, not just internally, but we're looking at implementing Health I Am, which is coming to VicPD shortly. This is a platform that will allow our officers to securely share information with Island Health in real time during some of those mental health apprehensions I was talking about earlier. We're hoping that it will reduce some time spent at hospitals because it will give those officers more tools to make an assessment in the first instance about the necessity to take somebody to the hospital under the provisions of Section 28. We're also continuing to refine how we deploy our patrol resources, using data to identify peak demand periods to ensure the right number of officers are available at the right times. And finally, we're exploring and we're utilizing tiered policing models, including the use of special municipal constables for non-core policing functions. And so, we've got volunteers, we've got special municipal constables, we have our regular sworn members. This approach really allows fully sworn officers to focus on complex investigation and higher risk calls, while trained special municipal constables take on roles like scene security, prisoner transport in some cases, or community safety patrols. Altogether, these initiatives demonstrate that VicPD is not standing still. We're continually looking for smarter, more collaborative, and more innovative ways to deliver effective policing within our existing resources. So next steps, of course we're here today on October 22nd presenting to all of you, and I'm really looking forward to some lively discussion and questions and answers. We have the individual council presentations in November, and then of course you will all engage in deliberations through January of 2026, and then we hope to have a final decision in March of 2026. That is it for our presentation. Very, very happy to answer questions, and I look forward to ongoing discussions about this budget presentation.
Thank you very much, Chief Wilson and Director Phillips, for the presentation, and I am just going to open up the floor and let you all start. Anybody?
Do you want to pass the microphone around?
I think.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, thank you very much. Councillor Hammond, you can be our first question.
Sure, thanks very much, everyone who's spoken thus far. So, for me, and it's not new, but maybe the number might be new, if we are being told that 65% of calls are non-criminal, then why shouldn't we be putting more of this budget towards other agencies that don't deal with criminal activity?
Sure, so that's a great question. But when we're talking about some of those other things that police are engaged in, there simply is no one else. Major special events, mental health calls. Mental health calls are not criminal, but under the provisions of the Mental Health Act, police are required to attend to them. At 2 o'clock in the morning, when somebody's in mental health crisis, there is no other service provider to attend. When people are dealing with disturbances, when bylaw is doing their work, in many cases, they won't do that work in the absence of police being there to stand by and keep the peace. When we're assisting other agencies like EHS or fire, there are many circumstances that they simply won't go into in the absence of police. They may not be criminal matters, but the reality is police need to be there. Abandoned 911 calls are very often not criminal in nature. However, in the first instance, you have to have a police response because that one time out of 10 when it is criminal in nature, in my 27 years of policing experience, they can be some of the most significant calls we go to in terms of public safety. Provincial statutes, traffic enforcement, liquor, none of those are criminal offenses, but they all require police. Motor vehicle incidents, when there's damage over 5,000, the expectation is that police attend those. So, you know, duty to warn is another good example. This is where we might be warning somebody in community who has threats against their life. So if you get gang members, for example, we have intelligence that there's a threat against their life. Who's going to do that duty to warn? There's a lengthy process that police have to go through to ensure that we do that in a way that's informing that person under very controlled conditions and tight timelines. You know, there's a lot of examples. Somebody who is about to jump off a bridge deck, for example. Would I like to have an alternate community response to that available? I sure would, but it's just not how our society is crafted, and there is no one else to attend those calls. So, you know, I think we always need to talk about where else could we be asking other resource providers in community to step up, 100%. But the reality is, those are all examples of situations where police are required. And we need to be properly funded in order to continue to fulfill those requirements.
Thank you very much. Councillor Cabbins?
I can usually be pretty loud, but
Thank you, Vanna.
thank you. I just want to start off by thanking all the staff who put this together and for responsible for the presentation. One of the nice things about it is it's been this way since I've been on council. The budget document is a very great document and allows us to get into a lot of detail, and I really appreciate that. I have starting off with a process question. I take the chief's comment that Section 27 appeals are probably not the best way to move forward, and I think we all can agree that we'd like to avoid that if possible. But just wondering if last year, if I recall, when Victoria Council asked for some changes, asked for some information, there was a bit of a take it or leave it approach to the budget. I'm just wondering where we are in the budget. Is there room from this point, if both councils come to consensus, are we able to change the budget to see that and that, or is this kind of a fixed budget? And what are your expectations in terms of feedback over the next couple of months and what we can do so we can hopefully avoid Section 27 appeals?
I'll take that, Jamie.
You're gonna get your steps in.
Thank you very much. At this time, this is the board's budget. If there's further discussion, it would go back to the board and we would have an opportunity to review and consider that. But at this time, the board stands behind this budget as being what is required to provide excellent, adequate, and effective policing services in Victoria and Esquimalt. Oh, Councillor Lawton. Jamie, could you just keep running back and forth? That's right.
Thank you for the presentation to both of you. I guess I might as well stand for a second here. I'm actually a little bit, it's very sobering to hear what you're saying, how underfunded VicPD is, especially considering so much of what's happening is social service response-based. And Chief Wilson, when you came to our council, you noted that you weren't involved in this budget because you've just come on board, but for the next one, we are woefully underfunded. So I'm concerned about going forward and what things we can do to proactively get other services in place. So I'm just going to pull up one example, and that is the CIRCLE, the Crisis Response Community-Led Team, that can handle some of those mental health calls and the suicidal ideation calls. Can the calls that come into VicPD be diverted over to CIRCLE? And I know they close at 1:30, I believe, so when you noted like 2 in the morning, there's no one else to call but the police. Is that one way that we could start moving to a different direction? Because
like frankly, this is quite frightening, the amount of money, police are expensive. And when it's really a lack of social services, we should be putting the funding into social services and letting police get back to what the police do best.
Yeah, that's a great question. So the first thing I'll say about the budget is I certainly did say at City Council that I was a bit late to the budget party. But I turned on the lights and asked everybody to stop dancing and joined and got up to speed as quickly as I could. So we did actually end up making significant changes to this budget proposal after I landed. So you don't, I don't think you have to be concerned about the fact that, you know, this was a reflection of it's a reflection of my concerns with respect to funding. So we did make some significant changes to it at the last minute after I had a chance to dive through all the numbers and all the resources and get a really good handle on it. In terms of the calls that our members are going to, so I can tell you right now, if I thought for a second that we had a large chunk of calls that our members were going to that they were not required to be at, I would be the first to be flagging that. I am absolutely not seeing that. So when our members are going, and part of that is because we do have really good social service providers here in Victoria and in Esquimalt. So I'll give an example, because by the time they're calling police are required, is what I guess I'm trying to say. So, you know, I'll give an example where somebody has barricaded themselves in the room, they're screaming and yelling, there's water coming from underneath the door, they have threatened to take their own life, we're not confident that there's not another individual inside the room. That's a call just from 2 weeks ago that I went to with patrol. That's when service providers are calling us. So you're not going to be able to have somebody responding to that call in the absence of police. So I'm confident that the calls we are going to are ones that are necessary for police to respond to. That's still not necessarily a criminal matter, though. You know, perhaps mischief with respect to flooding their suite, but the reality is that's a mental health call. But the service providers here are so good that by the time they're calling us, people are in significant crisis, and I would say the police are required.
Thank you very much.
So Circle couldn't, there's no integration there at all? No.
Thank you. Margaret, Victoria. Excuse me. I think there's something we all have to remember, at least I always do, and that is safety is the responsibility of the city. And VicPD in our case is the group that reports to the city, and that really is our responsibility. And I do understand that, of course, demand goes beyond what was traditional many years ago, because the demand for safety, of course, isn't necessarily criminal at all. So I recognize that. Now, Chief Wilson, I know that you just came from Vancouver, so I was wondering, how do you stack what's happening in Victoria compared to Vancouver, where you were?
So I would say that there's a bit of a disproportionate challenge here in Victoria, for sure. The lack of resources, from my perspective, exacerbates what I'm seeing. So in Vancouver, there are, certainly on the front lines, I would say, and I don't want to speak for Chief Rye in Vancouver, but they have many, many, many more resources they can draw on than we can here in Victoria or Esquimalt. So I would say the challenges are very, very similar, but they seem disproportionate here to me in Victoria. So in real numbers, of course, they're much greater in Vancouver, but proportionate to population, to the size of the city, they seem very, very disproportionate to me. I think we've got some really massive challenges on our hands in both the cities of Victoria and to a lesser extent Esquimalt. But you know, you've got, yeah, I would say there's my impression, having spent, like I say, 27 years in Vancouver, is that Victoria has, on scale, got a larger problem on its hands than Vancouver does.
Thank you very much. I've got Councillor Thompson next.
Thanks for that. Yeah, a quick request for some information information, if one of your staff could share around the presentation by email, ideally during the meeting. And then the other one would be, if you could send out the corrected report. I think there were corrections on page 56 or some number like that. Ideally, again, during the meeting, if that's possible. My question is about that chart showing the percentage of the municipal budgets over time, which was more or less flat over a 10-year period. If you extend out the budget changes that we're talking about today to whatever degree you have got final numbers or close to final numbers, do those lines bend upward, and what level do they hit?
Sorry, I was going to have to get clarification on the question.
Sure. So there was a graph, a chart, 2 lines on it.
Yep.
Victoria Esquimalt, the percentage of municipal budgets.
Yeah.
Been flat so far. With the changes you're talking about today, do they stay flat or do they go up? And if they go up, to what?
Well, isn't that 2025? So, sorry, are you asking for 2026?
Projection.
Projecting the next 5 years.
Oh, okay. We haven't done it.
Oh, okay.
We don't have that information. 2025 was 24% for Esquimalt and 23% for Victoria. Because we don't have this, the overall city budget, so we can't do it. So we don't know what your city budgets are for 2026, so we can't tell you what percentage, and we don't know what you're going to approve. So it's impossible for us to answer that question.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Caradona next. Yeah, we'll start with one.
Thank you, Chief, and thank you to the whole team for the presentation. You hear me okay?
Yeah.
I wanted to circle back to some of the questions that Councilor Cavins had, and maybe follow up on, in particular, the question of traffic and patrol. Because the question is, let me back up. I'm happy to see it proposed in the budget, because every single time the chief comes in, whether it's a previous chief or the current chief, I'm always talking about the need for traffic enforcement. But then I don't want to pay for it, is the problem. But in all seriousness, we are both, I don't know what his final numbers are, but obviously we're going to be facing historically challenging budgets. The budgets just seem to get harder every year, and I always look back to the pre-pandemic period where the average tax lift was 2 or 3%, which now seems just like crazy and utopian. That just seems like a different era. Now we're all trying to keep it under double digits, and it's increasingly challenging for taxpayers. We all know that, I don't need to say it. So, on the one hand. On the other hand, I do respect and agree with the fact that we probably are understaffed. We have to get back up to appropriate staffing. So the question is going to be, how do we do this in a fiscally responsible way without completely overstretching our taxpayers? And it's also a moment where it's important to just state in the context of this room that we at the City of Victoria are looking to our engineering department and finance and arts and everyone to reduce their budgets. So it's challenging then to look at potentially another 10% increase in the police budget. It was 11% last year, because everyone else in the city, their budgets are expected to go down. So it's challenging. I'm hoping that we do eventually get to some point where things can level off and where the lifts can get back into line with inflation. I don't know when, if and when that's going to happen. But all that leading to the question about traffic and patrol. Yes, I agree that we need it. We had 18, we're down to 3. We have to eventually staff back up. But what is the argument for doing it this year? Is that not something that we could contemplate stretching out by 1 year so that we can extend some of these costs in an historically challenging budget year?
This is why we need more members for microphone transfer.
So I guess the same could be said for any ask in the budget at the end of the day. So I have looked at our resources, I've looked at what we have, I looked at the gaps that I believe exist in the department, and traffic was a very, very apparent one. So, you know, just like, you know, I mean, I'm asking for 8 members to form the crime reduction unit from Victoria, because I think it is absolutely essential and necessary. The notion that you have 3 traffic officers for 2 cities, like Victoria and Esquimalt, is astonishing to me. And so that's why I asked for it in this budget, despite the fact that I know it's a big ask, but it is absolutely necessary.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you everyone for your presentations. Chief, if you could give us a bit more information around traffic. Do they work 24 hours? How might they support bylaw, which you are aware in Esquimalt, after hours and weekends, we don't have bylaw. VicPD is our bylaw. So is there a synergy there that could be helpful?
So I'm going to ask Deputy Brown to answer the question with respect to their hours, but one of the things I can say is that police officers are able to enforce bylaws. And I would absolutely be open to a conversation with respect to how we increase that work in Esquimalt. Absolutely.
Just to answer the question regarding traffic's deployment and their hours, they generally work day shifts. Our 3 members that are traffic generalists, that are out there doing proactive enforcement, responding to motor vehicle incidents, doing school zones, etc. They are generally working day shift. However, there are times in the year where they'll make exceptions to that and adjust their shifts. For example, around Christmas time, if we have a counterattack campaign or something along those lines, they will potentially adjust their shifts, but they are not working 24 hours, no night shifts at this time.
You know, another thing too is that we have the bikes for the traffic officers, so there's no cost associated with that. We have the space for them to deploy out of the Esquimalt division. As I say, they could absolutely engage in additional bylaw work, 100%.
So seeing no more first-time speakers, I'll take second time, anybody with a second-time question, and we'll go to you, Councillor Cavins.
Yeah, thank you. We've heard consistently over the last couple of years, and you alluded to it, Chief, a little bit about the problems of training with the Justice Institute. And hearing that we've got, I think, 24 officers, new officers, plus replacements, is it reasonable that we could actually fill those positions in this year? And kind of going back to a little bit with Councillor Cardona, just want to say, you know, we've consistently in this plan asked for traffic and control. So it's really great to see that, but just want to, again, I'm having the same reaction as Councillor Cardona is into the budget and knowing our budget constraints as well.
Thank you. So we absolutely have a plan with respect to the JIBC. Deputy Brown has, and the entire team actually, has put in a ton of work to submit a proposal, you may have read about it in the news, to the province to allow us to host an Island JIBC Academy here in January. We are ready, willing, and able to do that. And we would, VicPD would be, as I say, the host agency of that, although we have invited other island agencies to participate if they wish. We are confident that we could get through 16 recruits in that January class if we're given permission to move this forward. Deputy Brown submitted his proposal on behalf of the VicPD just on Tuesday. Was it Tuesday? Last week. We are moving forward in the event that we do get permission to run that academy so that we're ready to go. So that would be 16 in January and 16 in May. And then the question is, are we able to take all of those recruits into Block 2 to train them out on the road? And I have had a chance to speak to every frontline member at VicPD. I've gone to all of the watches and talked to them about this. And we would approach it as an all hands on deck project for VicPD, sort of short-term gain for long-term gain. And we would bring officers out of specialty units that have that field training experience out onto the road for that 3-month period for the purpose of getting those 16 recruits through Block 2, where they're required to work with a field trainer for a 3-month period. So we are absolutely confident we could get that done. Now, in the event that we do not get granted permission from the province to host our own academy, I have managed to secure 16 seats at the academy in May in any event on the mainland. We would prefer for it to be an island experience and to get those 2 classes through here at home, but we do have a backup plan in the event that we don't get permission for that island academy.
Thank you very much. Councillor Lawton next.
Hi, on the topic of open drug use, we need to be able to direct people to safe consumption sites. My understanding in Victoria is that only one is the harbour, and it's on Pandora, and we're trying to change things on Pandora. What are your thoughts about where can we send people? Do we need more safe consumption sites? What is one of the sort of non-policing ways that we can support curbing the amount of open drug use we're seeing in our community?
Great question. So we support a continuum of care, from harm reduction services all the way to treatment on demand, no barrier access to treatment in a timely manner, and everything in between. So I think the more services that you can have to assist people with substance use disorder along that continuum, the better. And spreading those resources out throughout not only our communities, but a variety of communities on the island, I think is key. So I would support any initiative to increase resources for people in our respective cities who are vulnerable and who are in need of assistance.
Councillor Gardner.
Usually I ask less than one question each time we meet, so this is great. I was quite, when I read the document, there was a withdrawal of other municipalities from the integrated units, and I think that really could be quite serious and problematic. So I'd just like you to discuss that a bit, and also some of the reasons given for them withdrawing was, of course, the cost of e-call. And I always thought college should be forced to pay for e-call, and not all of us. But anyway, if you can comment on that, please.
So we have a number of seconded positions that are fully paid for that have gone unstaffed because of the shortage of people that we have. So for example, we have positions at the Combined Forces and Special Enforcement Unit. We have positions at ENSET. We have positions with the Integrated Road Safety Team. So those are some secondments that we have not filled, that we could fill, because when we fill those secondments, we can hire those people on the other end because they're fully paid positions. So that's one thing. In terms of integrated units, I think I'll hand this over to Deputy McRae, who sits on a number of the JMTs for integrated units.
So as you may recall, last year, a couple of police agencies on southern Vancouver Island chose to withdraw from a couple of integrated units, including the Integrated Mobile Crisis Response Unit, as well as MIST, the Mobile Youth Support Team. Anytime any of those changes happen, they have an impact, of course, on the remaining people who are in the units. So we have seen some changes as it relates to that, budgetary changes that have occurred because of that. You also mentioned e-com. As you probably are aware and are likely anxiously awaiting, just as we are, we have been looking forward to seeing the results of the provincial review on e-com. They've done both an administrative review as well as an operational review of e-com. And it is our understanding that the board at e-com, the chief and I and Deputy Brown had an opportunity with the local area chiefs to meet with know Chief Wilson was interviewed as part of it. I was also interviewed as part of it, as well as many, many other stakeholders, both operationally as well as administratively, to see where changes could be made to try and improve things. And I'm not really talking about the service, I'm really talking more about changes could be made in the funding model and how it's funded and improve that. We, through the BC Association of Chiefs of Police, have made some recommendations to ECOM historically on potential changes, and so far none of that has occurred, but I think this report gives us the best opportunity we've seen in the last number of years to actually have the province step up and make some future changes.
And when do you expect it, more or less?
The board was under the impression they would have it in the next couple of months. I'm hoping it's actually a little bit sooner than that. When I say the board, I mean the ECOM board. From there, then they were going to make the determination of reviewing it, digesting it, and then determining how to share it with the municipalities, the cities, as well as the police agencies. I'm hopeful it'll be before the end of the year.
Thank you.
Okay, I've got Councillor Hammond next.
Thanks. I completely appreciate it. Thanks, by the way, Chief, for your response to my first question. I completely appreciate when people say you can't police your way out of all these problems. And yet, I know that if we have more police, there will be problems that we'll be able to take care of. But, and I'm not looking, this isn't a lobbying question. I really am wondering how we get, how we still solve the problems that are not all criminal, but they're disorder. And they're the disorder that a lot of people say they're just not willing to come downtown for. Recently, our council has gotten some responses from some people who were talking about, some businesses who were talking about some horrendous behavior. One of them, and I'll share it just because I have no reason to believe they weren't saying it was true. They have a cafe, they have a skylight, someone got up there, knocked on the window, and then defecated on the skylight, or the sky window. And so, like, you're not going to have police that are going to be there preventing that. But do you believe that if we have more of this police presence, we will be able to take care of, and I don't mean that example necessarily, but we'll be able to take care of the disorder that people know is not necessarily criminal. And if you don't see that exactly will, it's not going to eliminate all of it, but if it can't be just because there's more police, are there any suggestions on how we can deal with the disorder that the police can't be there for? We don't want a police officer at every corner. How do we go about dealing with the criminal element that you're talking about, and then also dealing with those disorders that the police can't always get to and are expected to be there?
So I think I'll just go back to some real life examples that I've experienced over the last few weeks, walking the beat, being out in patrol. And I think it's definitely a combination of a variety of responses from a variety of different resources. But you know, 900 block of Pandora is a great example. There are people in the 900 block of Pandora who are openly using drugs. And going up to a person who is doing that and perhaps arresting them, sending a message that those drugs, you can't do that here, that's not lawful, it's not legal, that is a police function at the end of the day. And when you don't do that, people start using drugs in the 900 block of Pandora, and it becomes acceptable behavior. I talked to 6 people who were set up in chairs, and they had their cooler with them, and they were using drugs, and they were sitting outside the pharmacy on the north side of the 900 block. And I was just shooting the breeze and chatting with them and saying, you know, what's going on? Who are you? What are you doing here? Introducing myself, that sort of thing. And 5 out of the 6 people who were there are housed. And I said, why are you here? Like, why are you choosing to be here? And they said, because this is where we hang out. This is our community. These are our friends. It was, you know, and they were very, very frank with me because they were talking about, you know, they come down to the street, they use drugs, they hang out for the day. It was a beautiful sunny day at the time. So if that behavior is acceptable and that's okay, then fair enough. But if we want to free that sidewalk up so that everybody feels safe when they walk down it, and so that it's unobstructed for people who have mobility challenges, for example, then you do need a police presence. And as I say, it doesn't necessarily mean throwing people in jail, but it certainly means making it clear that loitering on the sidewalk and using drugs is not acceptable. So I think it's just a question of, you know, in a case like that, what is it that you would like to see happen in the city of Victoria? In terms of that example that you described, I'm not sure what other resource would be willing to respond to an in-progress event like that, other than police. Do I think that...
And I meant more preventing these kinds of things.
Right.
Getting there at the very moment.
Yeah, but I think one of the things that seems to me that's happened in the city of Victoria is it seems that there has been an acceptance of behavior over time with not a lot of enforcement. And I think that that is for a whole pile of reasons. Decriminalization, COVID, a lack of resources for people, particularly during COVID. Where do they go? We went through the defund the police experience. I think there was a whole conflation of reasons why it became acceptable for people to engage in that kind of behavior. But we're here now. And in my mind, we need to get beat members out there, walking the streets, engaging with people, having conversations with them, letting them know that, it's not okay to smoke drugs here, and it's not okay to loiter here. And this is a better place for you to go across the street to the safe consumption site, for example. To put them in touch with resources, to work with our partners in bylaw, to work with our partners with City Works, to work with partners at places like Our Place, with Solid, with outreach workers. There's a lot of great resources in the city. Coordinating with police, I think, is important, but also, any plan to move forward, I think, has to have an enforcement piece to it, and that's why we have chosen at VicPD to so strongly support the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan, because it's all of those things, and I think it's necessary.
Thank you, Gladly. Councillor Coleman.
It's a long walk, I'm sorry. Thank you very much, and thank you for the presentation. The premise of the presentation is you would like to get the department back to a position of balance, and we're not balanced. You gave us two graphs, one saying we got 12 new officers over the last decade, which I think you used either the term meager or paltry, I'm not sure which, both apply properly. That growth was 4.9% over 10 years. The population growth you gave us was about 17.6%. So the differential between the 12 and what it should have been at 43 new officers, given the population growth, I think the population growth was only the city of Victoria. I went and checked, so it's actually larger than that. But what you're suggesting with the new officers that you put into the budget don't get you to balance. There's still a deficiency. So the question is, what do we see projected out over the next 5 years? Because that has a profound budgetary impact on us. Thank you.
That's a great question. And just to be clear, population growth, it's just one factor, because I talked about all of those other things and with respect to the complexities of policing over that 10-year period. We need to update the 5-year staffing plan, there's no question about that. I would say we're somewhere between 50 and 55 police officers short at the Victoria Police Department, which I know is a huge number. This is a big ask this year, I understand that, and I completely understand budget pressures, there's no question about that. But I also think that if we could get a reasonable lift this year, and in the meantime, build out our 5-year staffing plan, at least we're starting from a place where there is some recovery taking place around those staffing members. So, you know, I actually know that former Chief Manick talked last year about needing an additional 44 officers, so he wasn't far off, you know. My opinion is very consistent with what he was saying. You know, so I don't think it was, I think that the staffing plan, I wasn't here obviously when it was established. I know it was 4 or 5 officers a year for the next 5 years. And I just think we need to revisit that and redo it.
Thank you.
So then the supplemental.
Yes, go ahead.
If I boom, do I need the mic?
No.
Okay, fine, thank you. So the supplemental is in your comms plan, not just to us, but to the public. You need to talk about where the balance point is, I think. And would you like, and blend the 2 populations, so it's Esquimalt and Victoria? If that's okay, if you could speak to that, please.
Yeah, absolutely. So the population of the city of Esquimalt went up 10.7% during that same 10-year period. So it was also a significant population increase as well. I use the Victoria chart because we are asking for such a significant lift from Victoria, but Esquimalt was no exception as well. In terms of our communications plan, you know, we've just hired a new director of communications, who's sitting behind you, Tiffany Harton, and I'm really, really excited about not only launching some really robust, significant recruiting campaigns, but also strengthening VicPD's branding, but also working on community engagement and making sure that community understands where we're at in terms of staffing, needs. This is a big ask this year. I don't anticipate next year's ask will be as large, but this starts us off in the right direction. And as I say, in the meantime, we will work on updating that staffing plan.
Thank you. So we have just about 10 minutes left. We'll take a few final questions. Pardon? Sure, go ahead.
Just because I was asking questions before, I just wanted to highlight something, and I think I'm quite excited to see what parts of the budget, I mentioned it before, seeing traffic, seeing patrol being emphasized are the things that I've heard Esquimalt asking for in the past few years. So really appreciate seeing that. And also I think really seeing the Section 5 being used, I believe it's for the first time,
First time in budget.
in the framework agreement, to really reflect what we've been saying in Esquimalt, that there's a difference in policing needs and a difference in that. So seeing that, I really see that as a way working forward where we both can request different things that we see different needs over time. So I appreciate the willingness of the police board to look at that, but also Victoria Council for willing to do that. I think it's a big step forward. We haven't always had the world's best relationship, and I hope this is a way that we can make that work better. So I'm going to highlight that.
Thank you very much for that. Anybody else? Councillor Lawton?
I just a quick question about C-STEP post-March 2026, and I wanted just kudos to the department. I've been hearing from businesses that they're seeing more foot patrol presence out there, and they really like that. The community policing component is important to people, and I really believe in it. I think it's great too, but my concern is what happens after the end of March 2026.
So, well, I'm hoping what happens at the end of March 2026 is that we deploy those 9 peace officers that Victoria has provided with us. In fact, it's going to happen a lot earlier than that. But that's one of the reasons why I think we need to have a plan. And, you know, of course, we will continue to apply for any provincial funding that's available, including additional C-STEP funding. That program, I can't tell you, I've been making every effort to get out into community, to talk to people, to talk to organizations, to tour resource providers, but also to speak to business owners. And that comes up over and over and over again. How pleased people are to see that increase physical presence of police officers on bikes in particular, but also walking the beat. So, it all wraps up into the exactly what the intention is for all of them. Yeah, to carry that work on.
Thank you very much. Looking for any final questions, comments, or points of discussion? Yes, Councillor Coleman.
Thank you. I understand the need for this. I also understand why we look at traffic and the diminishment from 12 officers to 3. I am always a little cautious around that one because when I was first a councillor and the liaison to the Rockland neighborhood, I dealt with a number of folks who said, traffic is going far too quickly, it's a 30K zone, we need targeted police enforcement. And we did about 4 weeks of targeted police enforcement and handed out hundreds of tickets. More than 90% were to the neighbors who lived around that particular area. And they said, well, we didn't mean us. So if we're going to go back into traffic, which I think we need to do, let's have it targeted not on the emotional side, but on the data-driven side, please.
And there's so much more to that as well, like in terms of, roadblocks and impaired driving checks and, school zones, and yeah, there's so much that, traffic's really essential, in my opinion, to.
I will point out, it was a good revenue stream for us at that time, but it didn't work very well with the neighborhood.
Point well taken.
Thank you very much. Well, I think that concludes our joint board council meeting this year. We will look forward to following up the next steps in terms of individual council meetings. Councillor Thompson, I understood your request for the full report to be emailed out with the amended updates. Can that be done sooner rather than later? Tomorrow. Okay, that'll come out tomorrow. And I just want to thank everybody for your participation, your questions, your discussion, and ultimately for your support of VicPD and optimistically the board's budget. So thank you very much, and with that, I'll adjourn the meeting this evening.